Welcome. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon and The Blackest Heart and The Lonesome Crown, all published by Simon & Schuster Saga Press. Today I'm going to be doing my top 10 mystery novels of all time. So the only parameter I set for myself was it had to be a novel that involved a murder and a mystery. That's pretty much it. And top 10. But then I started compiling my top 10. And as you know, if you've watched my top 10 sci-fi novels, my top 10 fantasy novels, I just couldn't leave it to 10. So I says, okay, well, I'll do 12 because I can't leave these out. And then I'm like, no, but what about this one? It's like, okay, we'll do a top 15. We'll do a top 15. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, but there's these other super novels. So, top 20, folks. I know it said top 10 in the description, but I'm going to give you a bonus 10 right from the get-go. So let's get to it. So, just an honorable mention. This guy did not make my top 20, but he needs an honorable mention, and that is Robert Parker's Spencer series. Not my top 20, but I collect all of these novels, and man, they should have made it. They should have made it. But the stuff that's coming up is better. So, right up from the get-go, I can't... Coming in my top 10/top 20, coming in at number 21 is The Likeness by Tana French. This thing is weird. This is one of the weirdest, most gripping mystery novels I've ever read. There was a fraternity. There's 5 people living in the fraternity. One of the girls is murdered. It just so happens that the investigators that are investigating it, one of the women investigators looks exactly like the girl who was murdered. I mean, exactly like. I mean, you can't tell the difference. And so what she does is she pretends, she goes into the fraternity as if she's never been murdered, which is weird. Freaking weird. Like, she knows that the fraternity people murdered her, but yet she shows up the next day as an unmurdered person, and the people are like freaking out, and so she has to solve the the setup is implausible. It doesn't make sense, but it's such a fun read. Such a fun read. All right, let's get to the top 20. Open Season by Archer Mayer. It's the first book in his Joe Gunther series set in Battleboro, Vermont. I love these books. There's about 25 books in the series now. This is book number 1, Open Season. Starts off with a bang. I love Joe Gunther mysteries by Archer Mayer. Coming up in at number 19, In a Dry Season by Peter Robinson. You know I love my British mysteries. This is Yorkshire, Britain, Inspector Banks, Dynamite mystery. This one I like best because I've got the entire Inspector Banks collection. Again, there's about 25 in that series too. This one is about the 8th or 9th book in the series. I love this one because it's just not only does it have a murder mystery that's taking place in our day, but he's also investigating an ancient murder that took place in medieval times. So he's got to sift through some rubble under an old castle. It's just really cool. Really cool. Let's see, what was that? Number I don't even know what number 19. I think we're at 18. I've already lost count. I think this is number 18. The Complaints by Ian Rankin. Maybe some of you have read his Inspector Rebus novels. I like this one better. This is The Complaints. This is about one of the cops that's sort of the, he's the cop that investigates the cops. They call it, in Britain, they call it the Complaints Department. In America, it's sort of like called the Internal Affairs, right? This is a great murder mystery about a cop investigating. It's got a murder in it, but it's about a cop investigating other cops. I thought it was Dynamite, number 17. You know, we're somewhere in 17 area. George Pelecanos, Shame the Devil. This is the book 1 in one of his this is the Nick Stefano series. I mean, George Pelecanos has so many different series, and they're all about 4 to 5 books long. But I like this. I pretty much like all of them. Pretty much like all of them. But Shame the Devil's one of the better ones if you want to know who George Pelecanos is. If you've ever watched The Wire, HBO's The Wire, about the Baltimore Police Department and the Baltimore drug lords, George Pelecanos was one of the screenwriters of that show. That lets you know that this book is dynamite. Oh yes, Raylan. Elmore Leonard. You knew Elmore Leonard was going to come on my list. I think this is number 16 or 15 or something like that. Elmore Leonard writes so many great mystery novels in the vein of a Tarantino movie. Every one of, in fact, Elmore Leonard is Quentin Tarantino's favorite writer. In fact, Jackie Brown, the movie by Quentin Tarantino, was based off of a book by Elmore Leonard. Raylan Givens, the show Justified, starring Timothy Oliphant. Yeah, a lot of you didn't know that the show Justified was based off of the Raylan Givens series started by Elmore Leonard. Awesome. Awesome. We're at 14 or 13 or 15 or something like that. Dissolution. What is this one about? This one is about a guy who solves mysteries during the reign of King Henry VIII. Which King Henry was the one with the tutors, you know, with Anne Boleyn and you know, all the different wives that he had, you know. Well, there was a lot of murders that happened around that time, and this is about a guy who solves those murders in the time of the Tudors. And it's C.J. Sansom, and I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, about 7 books in the series. This is book number 1. Fantastic. If you want to read murder mysteries set in the Middle Ages, this is your guy. Where are we at? Number 13, 12? I don't know. Oh, my mainest man, Stephen King. He made the list. Mr. Mercedes. Need I say more? It's a great murder mystery. Just fantastic. I love this. You know, it's a slight supernatural bent to it. I almost didn't want to include it just because it's kind of like by a horror author, but it is a straight up detective murder mystery story. Mr. Mercedes, Stephen King. I don't think I need to say a whole lot about that. An Instance of the Finger Post. Oh man, this is a blast from the past. This came out in like the early 2000s, was a big hit back in the day. It's about a murder, but it's told from the perspective of 3 different people. So the first third of the book is told from one perspective, the second third of the book is told from another perspective, the third part of the book, and it's set in Victorian England. So around the Charles Dickens Tale of Two Cities time frame. My 12th favorite mystery novel, and I just read this a couple weeks ago, and it leapt straight up into my top favorite mystery novels of all time, and that's Devil in a Blue Dress by Walter Mosley. Okay, I kind of broke the rules with this one a little bit because it's not about a murder per se. It's about a guy who has to find a missing girl. Don't know if she's murdered or not, okay? Great book. Walter Mosley, set in the 1940s in Los Angeles. Our main investigator is a black guy, an African-American. So it's kind of cool to just see how this guy drifts through the underbelly of Los Angeles as a black guy, because he is a tough guy. He's an ex-World War II veteran. He's a tough guy, but since he's black in a predominantly white society, he can't really be as tough as he wants because that's going to get him in trouble. I thought it was a cool angle. My number 11. And this is a book I just reread recently. Lullaby Town by Robert Crease, one of the Elvis Cole and Joe Pike novels. This is another one that kind of breaks the rule. It's not really about a murder per se. It's about, because we don't know if it's a murder yet, because they're sent on a quest to find, our investigators are sent on a quest to find another missing woman. And they track her down to, it involves the mafia. This has got some of the greatest mafia stuff in it of all the murder mysteries we're going to look at. Robert Crease, I love those books. Okay, now we're into my top 10. Now we're into the top 10, which is what the video was all about to begin with. Tony Hillerman. Oh, I grabbed the wrong book. It was a Tony Hillerman book. Skinwalkers. Tony Hillerman's Skinwalkers. Set on the Navajo Reservation, starring the Navajo Reservation Police, Lieutenant Joe Lephorn and Sergeant Jim Chee, and it's the Skinwalkers. Oh my gosh. If you want to read a mystery about the desert Southwest and all the supernatural and magic things that the Native Americans believe in their culture and have the Skinwalkers and all this out, just these things are dynamite. I love my Tony Hillerman collection. I love it. And the Skinwalkers is by far the best and most famous of his mystery novels. Number 9, Neon Rain by James Lee Burke. A lot of you know that my name, Brian Lee Durfee, I kept the Lee in there specifically because James Lee Burke kept the Lee in his name, and he's one of my favorite writers. So it's like it's almost like in honor of him that I did that. Neon Rain is the first book in his Dave Robichaux series. There's about 25 books in that series now too, but Neon Rain is the first one. It's the bloodiest one. It's the grossest one. It's the most dynamite one. It's the most action-packed one. It's dope. It's straight dope. I loved Neon Rain. First book in a Dave Robichaux by James Lee Burke. Gorky Park by Martin Cruz Smith. Oh my gosh. Talk about, this was written, this is a murder mystery set in Russia during the Cold War, 1970s, mid-1970s during the Cold War. Murder mystery. You read this and you just sense chills up your spine about how this socialist communist government just had their grip around everybody's throat, you know, and just the paranoia. You're gripping your seat when you read this because you're just like the paranoia of having to live in that society was just overwhelming. That's why this was a huge hit back in the 70s, is because it really gave you a look at what living under a communist government would be like. You don't want that. No, you don't want that. You don't want it. You don't want it. It was chilling. The Name of the Rose. Where are we at? I don't know. We're at number 6 or 7. The Name of the Rose by Umberto Eco. One of the most famous mystery novels ever read. About a murder that happens in an abbey and a monk and his little protege that have to go solve it. Maybe you saw the movie starring Sean Connery and Christian Slater back in the 80s. Great movie. Even better book. One of the top-selling books in the world. The Name of the Rose. If you want to read a great mystery set in the Middle Ages, The Name of the Rose is where it's at. My number, where are we at? I think this is 6. Greg Iles, Natchez Burning. Oh my gosh, so Greg Iles, I got to tell you, man, this is book number 1 in a murder mystery trilogy that is one of the most literary mystery series you'll ever read. I mean, book 1 is Natchez Burning. Book 2 is right over here. God damn, just come off the shelf, piece of shit. Greg Iles, The Bone Thief. Sorry for my little anger burst there. And Mississippi Blood. Those are the other 2. But so this is book number 1, Natchez Burning. You know, I had to wrestle with the books over it. My patience is wearing thin. My patience is wearing thin. Number 5, my top 5. Elizabeth George, This Body of Death. This is book number 12, 13, or 14 in her Inspector Lindsay series. You know, we've got Barbara Havers and Inspector Lindsay. They're British cops. They solve murders in Britain. I love this series. One of my most favorite mystery writers of all time. I love Elizabeth George. She even signed this one for me. In fact, I got Greg Iles to sign. Well, what else do I got signed? I can't remember. The Greg Iles books are signed. My Elizabeth George book is signed. I don't know if I showed it to you. Yeah, I showed it to you. Anyway, if you like British mysteries, that's my favorite. Michael Connelly, dynamite. Inspector Bosch, Harry Bosch, Michael Connelly. Now we're into my top, 4. Oh my gosh, I love Michael Connelly books. I've got every Michael Connelly book right behind me here. This is book 5, 6, or 7 in the Harry Bosch series. It's just dynamite. I remember it as being one of my favorites that I read. Concrete Blonde by Michael Connelly. Book number 3. Book number 3. Oh, man. I loved this book from the opening line to the closing line. It's just one of the best books I've ever read. I love this book. Gone Girl by Jillian Flynn. Oh my gosh, just from the opening line, beautiful writing, just a gripping story, a great mystery. There's murder that happens in it. It's not really a detective per se. Well, there's kind of detectives that are working on it, but it's more told from the perspective of the people that are possibly involved in the murder. Oh my gosh, I just loved Gone Girl by Jillian Flynn. Another one of the books that just became a massive, huge hit when it came out, and rightfully so. Book number 2, my second favorite mystery novel of all time. The Secret History by Donna Tartt. That's right, you guys know, if you've followed my reviews, one of my favorite writers of all time is Donna Tartt. She was in my top 10 authors of all time. I mean, I have like a literary crush on this author. I love to just sit down and talk to her about her writing style. I would just love to meet her and all that stuff. Just so cool. So cool. This book set in a New England, a really elite New England college campus with some kids and there's a murder involved and this, that, and the other. It is just one of the classic murder mysteries of all time. The Secret History by Donna Tartt. Number 2. What's my number 1? My number 1. My number 1. Some of you might have already guessed because I talk about this guy all the time. Talk about this guy. Dennis Lehane, Mystic River. In my estimation, the most perfect mystery novel ever, of all time, bar none, no arguments. Not only that, but I've met Mr. Dennis Lehane at a couple of the events that I've been to as an author, and he graciously signed my book for me. And so that's it, man. That's the top 10 / 20 / 22 some odd mystery novels ever written, according to me. Thanks for watching. If you've got some mystery novels that you think belong on the list, please put them in the comments below.